from another zero. Karen Ann Daniels, Crystal Mercado. Hi, welcome, friends, colleagues, professional, successful women. Welcome to From Another Zero.
Hi, we're so happy to be here and virtually.
Yes, we're so excited to be anywhere you are, so that's good.
Yay! Yes, and I wouldn't have it any other way. So, for people that don't know, I'm going to have you all introduce yourselves, but we are in San Diego. We're recording in San Diego, but Crystal moved to Japan this year, and she's making like a little cameo, let's say, and she's now in TJ because that's how international she is. So I'm going to, give you the floor and let you all introduce yourselves, whoever wants to go first.
K.A.
No, I think Crystal. I'm like,
oh my God.
Moved to Japan this year. ...
Okay. Are we talking like full professional? Just a little bit. Okay,
go for it.
So Crystal Mercado. I'm currently here in my dad's house in Tijuana, visiting for a very temporary period of time. Next week on Thanksgiving, I'm flying back to Japan with the dog and with my husband's kids, because we're going to get a chance to actually hang out and visit. We haven't been hanging out with the kids basically since we moved to Japan in March. Mm-hmm. What's going on with me professionally? Bocón is still going. That's my theater company. Mm-hmm. We have a great program over at Balboa Elementary School where we do arts education. Obviously, that's been totally different this year and even at the end of last year. But we're still going strong there with 3 different artists. And I make the occasional cameo.
That's awesome.
And yeah. And I've been in theater and arts education and community-based work for ages. That's how I met Karen Ann. We were at the Globe, and we just kind of connected as friends, but then just started to dive into like more of the community-based type of work. And, and then just like lunch bitch sessions, needed a camaraderie.
Help to get businesses started.
Little things, no big deal. Powerhouse women, whatever. So, but yeah, that's my background. Mostly just theater education, community-based work, theater for social change, creating new work for young people. Bocón is a theater for youth company. So we are focused on creating important and multicultural work for young people and for young people to see themselves on the stage or in the screen, wherever it may be at the moment, and in the classroom.
Mm-hmm. Karen Ann.
Hi, I am Karen Ann Daniels, and I am also a San Diego native, grew up here. And what else am I supposed to say about myself professionally? So I actually currently am physically in San Diego, probably actually closer to TJ than I am to San Diego technically, but but I actually have
Chula Vista in the house.
I'm actually, though, technically live in New York right now, or work in New York, at the Public Theater as the director of the mobile unit. Crystal mentioned before that I was at the old Globe, which is where we met back in the day before there was an arts engagement department. We were the hot mess of the groundwork that I think either cleared or paved the way. We're not sure which, for its engagement to sort of happen. But then we continue to work together, like she said, personally, professionally there. But before that, I started off as a singer-songwriter, morphed into actor, morphed into actor-director, morphed into actor-director, playwright, and community engagement artist. And so that's the work. And like Crystal, I think I switched gears along the way. Like I was performing and I kind of was like, so what else is there with this stuff? And so really just found myself mostly engaged when I was teaching and when I was in the room with other people and with students, and watching students really, you know, move from I can't do this, or I don't sing, to, you know, like, you know, jumping off other people's shoulders while, you know, singing belting out a number and doing the splits. So, you know, like that stuff was so cool just to see, and also to see how the effect it had on their families, and to see the sort of the multi-generational connectivity that would happen just from participating in theater activities. And I think that's kind of what made me makes me happy. That's where the, you know, it's just seeing how we all connect and with each other and with who we are as human beings.
Mm-hmm. I would say, because I met you both at the Globe, or because of the Globe, and that we have to be grateful for. But I do think that you both paved and cleared the way for all this work, and especially now with another, you know, hit or circumstance or change or whatever you want to call it. And I think that that's a great way to go to what we're going to talk about, because there's so much to talk about that I'm like, what do we do? But let's start, because both of you are you have a vision, and it's easy for you to, you know, see how it should be or what is needed. I see you that way. Don't make any faces. You're going to see it when we upload the Zoom call on YouTube. But curriculum, like what is for you that you have implemented programs, that you have developed programs, and then, you know, hit the ground running at certain points. How important is it? How do you come up with it? Can anybody do it? And then why doesn't everybody? You know what I mean? Like, for reals. So whomever wants to take the floor.
Good.
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in just because, you know, and we can piggyback on each other, you know. Yeah, as far as the curriculum, I think what our focus has been, and what my focus has been, ever since I was passionate about theater and education. I think I'm a little different than other theater artists, in the aspect that when I started in high school, I knew I wanted to work in the intersection of theater and education, and theater and making an impact. And I thought theater was just the perfect tool for building empathy and for feeling and understanding somebody else's story. And I said, this is such a powerful tool, really, for social change. And the most powerful place you could see that, you could see its effects, are with children or with young people. You know, obviously you see it all over, but just the power of you know, influencing a young person to define themselves and to find their voice. And that's really been the, you know, the thing that's pushed me forward this whole time, whether it's Bocón or when I was working at the Globe or at young audiences, you know, which is arts education, which is now Arts for Learning. But any endeavor that I'm in, and I'm thinking about how to help that participant or that student or that young person find their voice. And, you know, just really closely connected to that is that, you know, mostly I'm working with kids who are not white, and their voices aren't being put on a platform. They're not being showcased on TV, in the theater, wherever, all these media forms. And so really, really closely connected in helping someone bring out their voice and their expression and whatever story they have, is that it is deeply influenced by how you identify and what you look like, and your hair and your voice and your language and the passion for your culture, whatever that may be. And so when it comes to specifically like curriculum, like building curriculum for children, or just building curriculum for education or arts engagement sort of things, that is my focus, is what can I do to make you feel comfortable, to make you feel like your voice matters, to make you feel like, let me help you get that out. And that's my job. Mm-hmm. And and sometimes, you know, I've also been a victim of like, let's talk about, you know, being like Mexican American with all these
Oh,
kids,
God.
right? And like, and
Don't
what is
get me
that?
started.
Yeah, oh girl. And I've done that. And then the kids are like, we want to talk about how we all like skating and we're all skaters. And I'm like, oh, but okay. but probably because I didn't have that when I wanted to talk about like, why do I look white? And
She is a blondie, you guys. You'll see her.
and a gray apparently, but but you know, I wanted to talk about that when I was younger, but I didn't have the tools. So then I think like that's what these kids want, and they just want to talk about, you know, how do we make friends?
Yeah, because there's a point, you know, less and less now because of social media and everything, but yeah, there's a point where, you know, there's no color or race or whatever. It's like if you can skate or not. that's the important thing.
And,
right?
And that feels good actually. They're like, oh, we're good with that stuff, Miss Crystal.
Yeah.
Let's talk about being friends or like not being nasty or whatever it may be. Not that that's always the case, but I've definitely had that experience a few times. I'm like, all right, well, there goes my agenda out the door. But yeah, that's and what was the other part? Like, why aren't people doing it?
Yeah, I mean, why doesn't everybody do it? Why aren't more people doing it? You know?
I don't know. I think, you know, it could be fear. It could be, you know, if you're not coming from that background, it's scary if you, you know, or you might not know how to enter into a community that looks different than you and that, you know, sounds different than you. And how do you, you know, still do your job and do it respectfully and honor, you know, the participants you're working with. And I think some people are just afraid of that. And, but I'm not sure. I don't know. Maybe I'm surrounded by people that are doing the work. So I'm like, I don't know who's not. I know there's people not doing it, but I just talk to people who are doing it.
I don't know. I have some thoughts about that.
Yeah, all right, go.
Please share.
Take it away.
I mean, I have thoughts about why people don't do it. And because you know, for me, as I've moved from, you know, like one like large white institution to another, I see the sort of the infrastructure and the framework within these places, and it's very much connected to sort of, you know, who we are as like a country, quite frankly, and being sort of a capitalistic society, and the emphasis being on sort of individualism, and so versus how an individual fits into a larger collective, it is just this track. It's about the individual excelling versus like this sense of connectivity about how we all excel together. When one person excels, it's part of a community, and it should set off a ripple effect. And in fact, it does, I think, but I think we don't pay attention to that. Like we don't place value on that part of it. So I'm just, when I think about why to do this work, it is because we have such a deep history of literally segregating in all of the ways, like not just sort of the typical, you know, like civil rights movement sort of way we think about it, but we segregate, and that is the nature of white supremacy and culture. And so that's the thing that we're brought up on, and we adhere to. All of our systems follow that, and therefore it is always sort of pitting people against each other instead of sort of creating a sense of connectivity. And I think that's why the kids are like, but no, I want to talk to people who are skaters. And the same thing happens, you know, I think in a prison. I think the same thing happens in the senior centers. I think the same thing happens, you know, in other kinds of community spaces. And I think that people are actually really desperate to find ways of connectivity outside of those systems. And so for us, or at least for me, the work is to figure out, and some days of the week I'm tired of this, but to figure out how
as you should, because you're human, and yeah.
But it is constantly that sort of battle of like chipping away at the practices that have sort of become, you know, solidified and ingrained, and to help people see that if we, you know, took this brick out, and we put, you know, different kind of material in, it would be just such a different building, you know, like that's the, you know, that we can actually create a firmer, stronger structure as a culture and as people if we could play more together, which I think is a big piece of what this work is about. you know, when you and I, we were kids, like I was out in the street playing with my neighbors. Like it didn't matter who they were. Like, you know, you would just knock on the door and you would just keep knocking on doors until somebody could come out and play.
Yeah,
like
exactly. And you were asked the adult, right? Can so-and-so come out and play?
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
why
You
not?
had to like, yeah, and you had to like learn how to speak to an adult respectfully when they answered the phone and be like, "Hola, señor, ¿cómo está?" You know, like make little chit chat, and you know, before you get to the kid.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Where your neighborhood would like come to your birthday party, you know, and I don't know, I don't have kids, but from what I see, it's like, you know, you from your mommy group and you're, you know, like
The book club and stuff like that.
People don't know their neighbors, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and I know this feels like very far away from curriculum, but to bring it back,
No, it's like it's like a thread, totally.
what I'm looking for are ways to lift up commonality in any way, shape, or form through the activities that we do. And I think theater in particular is really poised in a different way than visual art or graphic arts, or right. Those things still predominantly focus on an individual. Theater actually requires the whole room, right? Everybody to come together. I need a graphic artist to make a production happen. I need a carpenter. I need an electrician. You know, I need more than just actors, right? Like I need a whole community of people to actually make something visual or an event happen. And that's the thing that you learn all the way back into a classroom when it's just a small circle of people, you know, playing zip zap zop. That's where it begins.
That game. I learned it with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you, I mean, I know that you just explained it basically, but I want a more ABC kind of approach, because we're talking about, first of all, we're women. Second, we're still like young women. Young women. Well, but to this point, we started out like really young, you know, and starting out young, telling other people kind of where to go, what to do, or how the situation should be. It's sometimes it creates a little bit of hostility and, you know, and not like a little bump, let's say. And being Mexican American, you know, Black, all this, how do you go into different communities that are not your own, that those are perceived like the, ooh, how do I do this? You know, the sensitive aspect of it, and you all have done it. How do you go to other communities that are not your own and make community out of it? What is
Sorry, just to jump in, what it reminds me of is there's a game called Where I'm From, and you know, you sit in the circle and somebody gets in the center and they say where I'm from, and they say something that's really specific to, you know, maybe how they grew up or their neighborhood or whatever. And when you sit in a room, you hear where people, what their backgrounds are. And I remember playing this game. This is actually also at the Globe with Michael Road. And hearing all these people, you know, say where they were from and what their, you know, lives were like. And I was like, trying to think like, what, you know, what is super significant about where I'm from? Mm-hmm. And where I'm from, I grew up in a neighborhood where I had a little bit of everybody. And I didn't grow up in a neighborhood that was homogeneously Black. I also didn't grow up in a sort of also sort of a monolithic Black experience, because my mother was an immigrant. So I had both sides. I had a Black American father, and I have a, you know, British Jamaican mother. So that's a very complex identity. Yeah. And then you place that identity in Southern California, and then you know, and then you add the fact that my father was in the Navy. So now you have sort of like the military aspect to it. And you have these two people who raised me who lived in lots of other places on the planet. and went to all these other places on the planet before they met each other, settled down, and ended up here. You know, and I was, you know, second to last US exit. That's my frame. You know, my dad's best friend was Chaldean. My mom's friends were either, you know, were mostly islanders for the most part. Like she found like the random people in San Diego, but then also our neighbors. You know, her best friend is Welsh. The neighbor next door, they were white from like Missouri and Oregon, and the people across the street were Mexican American. You know, the people next to them were Mormons. The people down the street were Jehovah's Witnesses, but they were Mexican Jehovah's Witnesses, right? Like everybody was there. I had Filipino Americans, I had Vietnamese Americans in my neighborhood. And I had Japanese. The lady who used to babysit us when we were kids was Japanese, and her kids were Black and Japanese. So that's where my experience comes from. So when I walk out the door in the world as an adult, I have all of that, right? You know, as you're talking about from another zero, this is mine probably.
Keeping on brand, yes.
So, but this is all of the stuff that creates the, you know, the foundation, in addition to just, you know, how your parents raise you, etc. But that's the exposure that I had. You know, I had that exposure. I had the exposure of hopping in my dad had a motorhome, and we used to drive across country every year, right? So I would drive from San Diego up to Florida, up to North Carolina, you know, and so I got to see a lot of things, meet a lot of people. And I watched my father too. You know, like I say, when people don't know their neighbors, my dad knows all the neighbors. Yeah. I mean, he does, because he grew up in a place where he knew everybody in the community, right? Like growing up in a very small Black Southern town in North Carolina, you know, means that he was like he was related to half of everybody anyways. But, you know, he would say he'd get in trouble, and then, you know, he'd get like a spanking all the way home. So it's just, you know, that is my foundation in the world. So when you start to go out and work, especially in San Diego, into the community, I may not speak Spanish, but I do. My best friend growing up was not Spanish, was Mexican. You know, my other best friend was Filipino. So I was like, I knew how to cuss in Tagalog before I knew how to cuss in English, right? Like, so that's cool. The world. That's my frame of reference. So it's always starting with your experience, how you relate to people. It starts with the empathy. I think that's what that journey is about, is building the capacity for empathy. So when you walk into a room, you're not just there for what you want. You are there to find out how you connect with other people.
Yeah, totally. Like, I think that, you know, just speaking on what you were saying earlier, is you know, you start with that commonality, right? Is I think the more, I might not have had, you know, that gigantic experience, but definitely as far as like exposure to so many cultures, but something that I've realized as I'm meeting people that are different than myself, living in Japan right now has just been like crazy. Like, for the first time in my life, I mean, I've always felt like I didn't really look like the people around me, but now it's like we stick out like a sore thumb. Like, you walk out literally right off the base, and all of a sudden, you know, you're in a sea of people that don't look anything like you and don't speak your language. You know, most Japanese don't speak English or Spanish. And, you know, and you feel like a total outsider, but just by talking to people just a little bit, you know, you realize like we have so much more in common, and the things that we want for our families, the things we want, you know, they're so similar. And starting from that, and then building the empathy with the parts that maybe they're different than what you've experienced, and then you just go from there. I think, and I think that something as theater artists, I realize when I sometimes communicate with people who are not theater artists, I'm like, we have such a capacity for empathy and for like listening and understand and trying to understand the other person, because just the simple act of being an actor and trying to, if you're playing a villain, you know, you would think that villain is not empathetic, but you have to find the truth in that character and the believability and why they're doing the things that they do. And you have to place yourself quite literally into their shoes, and that act into placing yourself into someone who might be totally different than you. You have to find those things within yourself to connect to that. And I'm saying like as a non-actor, you know, just like something that I've seen and experienced on a very minimal level. And it's so powerful. And so how do we use that tool for creating commonality, finding commonality, building empathy with those who have similar stories than ours and have totally different stories than ours. Yeah.
Probably just a really deep sense of self, because I think I think theater also does the other thing of making you feel stronger about who you are, right? Like what your shell, your spirit, what you have to offer is useful in theater. Like that's all you have is you especially when you're performing. You're the tool. So you have to really get in touch with all the things about you that maybe you didn't like, but you still have to figure out how to use them. And then you find another way to add, that they're additive, that they become part of a bit larger, beautiful thing, instead of just being this thing you're kind of okay with. So you can amplify parts of yourself when you can pretend to be something you're not, which is exactly the same thing about the empathy, about role play. If you were like, I always thought I was a blonde girl from the Valley, well, you can go put on a wig and go play a blonde girl from the Valley. Like, and what is that like? What is that experience like? And understanding suddenly, because you do your research, especially when you're an actor, you got to learn how to understand what that life and that history is like. And you have to create and invent, even for yourself, what is the journey of this character before the moment of this story that we're about to play. And all of that work, it's all the process stuff, is the stuff that we're saying we like, and the things that we think are absolutely useful skill sets to build into humans and into schools and children and communities at large.
With what you said, a question popped in my head, but then I want to continue with learning. I want to talk about miscasting now that you mentioned it, but let's continue with learning on this positive note. I was talking to Crystal, and we were, because oh my God, I want to talk about so many things with both of you, but and she talked about a learning environment and this situation with the pandemic, COVID, and distance learning, and sometimes the environments, the households not even ideal, just like, to have an hour or two of class or be able to do homework, or because you're there static and you can't go to the library, or you can't do, your study period hall or whatever that you can focus. Can we talk a little bit about learning environments? Because I think it's something that has been totally overlooked. I think the jabs have been, towards the teachers mostly. It's like, oh my God, my kid is awful. I've never had XYZ problems with my kid because of this, that, right? And in Mexico, TJ specifically, because that's where we're at, it was a thing of assuming that everybody had internet, right? And that's also another aspect that dives into this. And then we have like depression and, acting out and all that, but learning environments. Tell me a little bit about, and in the general aspect, COVID and general aspect.
Yeah, I think I'll dive into that one. Dive right in. I think what's happening now is there's obviously some unique and special things going on. For example, I'm able to teach right now for the Globe. I'm doing a coLAB project, and I'm doing 2 classes here while I'm in Tijuana, San Diego, and I'm doing 4 classes, 4 workshops when I'm in Japan. Amazing, beautiful, and all the participants are safe in their homes, and I'm able to work with them, which I would have never done if this pandemic would have happened, right? So some good things, right? Some rays of hope, some light through what's going on here. Right now, my heart goes out to all those teachers. My heart goes out to the kids who are learning during this time. It is so hard. It is so hard. So one, you're absolutely right. So not all kids are comfortable showing where they live. It might be for them embarrassing, and they might not have a quiet place to work. Or even a space. internet also was an issue. I think the schools, at least at Balboa, did a great job of sending home hotspots. So they had to figure out what kids had internet at home, what kids did not, sending home technology, sending home supplies. You know, like we're starting the arts program, and I was like, what do they have? And some of the teachers like, we sent home crayons, and some of them are like, we didn't send anything home. Or, you know, or just like pencils and, you know, notebooks. And like, okay, and guess what? Who's super equipped to be flexible? Who's super equipped to, you know, roll with the punches? Artists, you know, be creative with what we have. It's incredibly difficult nonetheless, but yeah, now we're making art on the back of pizza boxes with, you know, whatever you have, and you know, things like that. But you know, I the first couple of days that I was here, I was staying with my friend Lucy, who's a second grade teacher, you know, and I got to see firsthand what that looks like, and it is heartbreaking, really, honestly. Like it's first of all, incredible to see the kids with the effort that some of the kids are able to put in. Hi, and they show up and they're staring at their screen and they're doing their homework as best as they can, and you know, and then there are moments of complete and utter frustration, you know, like you know, Lucy was trying to show them this new thing where they could all write on at the same time, but it was just not working, and they spent 15 minutes of their 30 minutes dealing with technical issues. But Miss, it's not opening for me, Miss Ortiz. I can't do it, Miss Ortiz. What about this? Da, 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 da. And she's like, and like through it all, she was just like, okay. And then it all fell apart. She was like, well, that was, you know, and like she was so calm the whole time. And she was just like, well, what did we, you know, that was, you know, part of what we just learned today was how to problem solve that. And, you know, it's part of playing with it and just experiencing that. And maybe next time it'll work better. And I was like, I would have lost my mind.
I cried on screen.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, you know, learning environments are nothing even close to ideal. I mean, studies will, I'm sure, someday come back about what's going on right now. And how it's affecting our children. The other thing that I'm really, really legitimately concerned about is our lack of touch and our staring at screens all day. It's a tool and it's fantastic. Like I said, I'm in Tijuana, we have Chula, Vista, we have San Diegan. I mean, we're all here like connected, seeing each other's faces virtually, which is amazing. But this lack of touch, and honestly, kids, we need that. I mean, you know, I don't want to promote any unsafe habits, but while I was here, I got to visit a few people, you know, with masks on and everything. But, you know, we hugged quickly. Sometimes I had to wear a costume in order to hug people because I wanted to be safe.
Baby shark, doo, 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 doo. Okay. We don't own the rights to that.
Yeah, let's not do the whole thing. But
It's so true.
But I didn't realize how much I missed seeing my friends and touching, and like even through a costume, you know, and you know, today I canceled some in-person things and I was like feeling really depressed and sad in the morning.
Yeah, she canceled on me.
I know, I'm sorry, girl. I love you. I'm sorry. I was like, I can't go to San Diego because that means I'd have to take an Uber back, and I don't want to be in an Uber with some rando and then cross the border, and I don't know what that's like. And I was just like, I can't.
Right.
You know,
you have to do what's safest for everybody, and I think that's what's really hard about this time is it's really hard. Not everybody agrees on what that looks like.
There's a huge purple tear in California.
Yeah, and all of that stuff is affecting our kids because our kids, I understand the need for safety. I understand. I'm also concerned that they're, you know, going to grow up feeling like, don't touch me, you know, you're unsafe, you know, and all of that. And again, it's breaking our communities apart. So
or the pendulum will swing entirely the other direction where it gets real unhealthy.
Right. They're like, they need so much. They're like, oh.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. You know, I just to say, I mean, you know, you both know this, that when the pandemic started, my sister and her family ended up, who live abroad, ended up, like escaping the country to come to the U.S. because of the, you know, healthcare, right? The healthcare here is better than where they are currently living. And so we had a whole house full. So we have 6 people in here trying to use the internet, you know, and it's usually just grandpa, right? Like it's grandpa, YouTubing. Like that's how much internet he has. So you have grandpa, you have the encroachment of space, right? Like, where's my space to be exactly what you're talking about? And, you know, clearly we're way in just a much more blessed circumstance than a lot of people are. But even then in this, it was really tricky, you know, like where I'm sitting right now, like, during the day, it was me, because I'm working East Coast time, so I'm up real early. And then and in the evenings, my niece and nephew were going to school in Southeast Asia when school started. So, which is 12 and a half hours ahead of us.
That's the
So
other
at
thing,
night, they were here and they just started high school. So, you know, they're here at night. So this house was like, the bills alone, like people don't actually sit in their houses for 24/7 using the electricity and the gas and the, right? Like that's a change during an economic, so there's already tensions and things happening within your home.
Yeah.
And I know in New York, where it was really, really, you know, really bad, a lot of those kids, their parents were the essential frontline workers, right?
Yeah.
So, and you're looking at kids of different ages that are all having to be at home. You're looking at the isolation of seniors. That's one of the reasons why I left New York, was so that my dad was not here on his own trying to fend for himself. I mean, and I showed up and I quarantined in my room for 2 weeks to make sure that I wasn't coming in here to, you know, impact my dad.
Make it worse.
Right. But I will also say, you know, that I think we both feel the withdrawal once the family had to go back, that it's just the two of us in here. And, you know, here holidays are coming, and, you know, every once in a while he's like, who are we having over for Thanksgiving? And you know what I mean? And it's like you forget momentarily that, oh wait, we can't. You know, he used to go out with his buddy every other week. They would go have lunch together. That has stopped. We don't see anybody. And for our older humans, you know, our elders, same thing, physical touch, connectivity, being able to be part of a community, of a family, is so key and important. And in fact, what you probably worked most of your life to be part of. So the fallout is huge. It's huge for parents who are either, you know, struggling, women who've been the hardest hit for job loss. And I will also say that I think with the education system in particular, what it has revealed is also the weakness in our education system and in our curriculums, in our pedagogy. We have been doing school the same way for hundreds of years, and not changing it. Like, as many advances, as much science as we have around all of these things, there has been no investment actually in making school, the school experiences, better for our students. And so now they're getting in home, and the structure is not adaptable at all. That's what they're struggling with, you know, in addition to all the pandemic related circumstances, is that they don't have a curriculum that translates to this.
And how would you tap into that in order for it to translate in your experience?
I mean, I think right now it's really hard to even answer that, mostly because it does feel like we've gone from on the roller coaster of in-person partially, you know, like I don't know of any sort of singular effort that is actually trying to address this part of the complexity, right? Which is, well, what if we need to go back in? What if we need to come back out? You know, so I think that, like what Crystal says, I'm sure there's people studying it. And I think there are some people who have some really great information out there. And I think we're probably at a stage where people are really leaning into, you know, like the 7 norms of collaboration and like things like that, working agreements, you know, things that people would never say in meetings are things that are starting to be really paid attention to in work environments and in classroom environments that, you know, I work mostly with adults right now. So that's what's becoming the norm in those places, right? What to do if your technology, you know, goes out, right? Like there's that. There's addressing, I think, even in work environments, like like how people don't always understand the technology they've been using for years, you know? So it's like, oh, I didn't know Outlook could do that, right? Like, because they use 3 things and that's all needed to get by. So, you know, I don't really know if I have an answer to it other than that we actually need to start thinking about and maybe using the time to experiment in new ways, right? Yeah.
I was going to add something to that. Something I was thinking just now, that, you know, as far as like, this is such a crazy time, but there's good things that have happened, right? So like good things that have come out, and I try not to focus completely on that, but to remember to acknowledge that. And something that has happened, because during this pandemic, we've also had some social uprising, you know what I mean? And all that has been happening just a little bit. And all that is created the environment that we have right now, the learning environment, right? And something that we did at Bocón, which we probably would not have been able to do in years past, is that we decided we're going to focus our curriculum solely on social justice and social and emotional health. Because usually we're always like trying to justify the arts somehow, and like, we're going to integrate the arts into your math, into your English language arts, into social studies, or whatever it may be. And this year we just said, no, we need this. You guys can do all of that other stuff. We're going to do social justice, and we're going to do social and emotional health. And that's what we're going to focus on as artists. And what was beautiful, and you know, maybe we're spoiled at Balboa, but when we told the teachers like that, you know, that's what our focus was going to be, I was like, I'm not doing your curriculum. We're doing this.
Good for you.
And they were so excited. That was their response. It was like, oh my God, kids need this so much. Mm-hmm. They're obviously we're disconnected. We that social emotional part is like hurting. Our social justice part is hurting. We don't talk about these things as much as we want to, as much as we should. And
nobody knows how to do it, right? Like, I mean, I think that's the thing, that again, theater comes into play because we have to have those conversations just to play a character. So like, I think that those are the skills. That's where they become really useful in our world. And I think, you know, if I was to make like a case for why the arts are important, it is exactly what Crystal's talking about. You know, it is our social emotional health, our well-being, our connectivity as communities, our ability to be resilient, adaptive, you know, flexible, that if something doesn't go right the way we planned it, that's not the end of the world, and that there are other things I could possibly do or think of. You're constantly having to problem solve, essentially. And so I think that's, I mean, like, super applaud you, because we are all in the throes of it. And, you know, pardon me, but I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were talking about, because the white folks are flailing around on the ground going, I don't know what to do. Yeah. And she was saying people like us, in fact, this is the moment we are absolutely equipped. Mm-hmm. And if I was going to expend a ton of energy, I think it's right to be expending that energy on children.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, absolutely. But I think that's one of those positive things about what's going on as far as like learning environment is that, you know, not everyone, but there are teachers and there are, you know, schools in our area that get it and that care about these things that are so deeply important. The well-being of our students in their internally, and also how they're responding to this world.
And the teachers too.
What was that?
Teachers, the administration of the school. I mean, the burden that is being placed on them right now. I mean, we've already thrown, like, you know, the whole dumpster of things onto our education system, and particularly to teachers, right? Mm-hmm. And now we're saying even more. And those teachers have their own families that they're trying to uphold, their own kids that they're trying to like calm anxiety for. Like, I think that, you know, it's so important that if schools can, or I mean, the community can come together and start to create these spaces very strategically, because we're going to need it. Like, we may get a vaccine, and, you know, we may all be able to walk outside and hug each other again someday if we want to, right, by the time that happens. But I think that we're going to have years and years. It's amazing to me when you look at like history and how things play out, that something that can happen in one moment, right, will traumatize us for a century.
Yeah.
As we talk about, you know, what does this mean in this moment with George Floyd and this racial reconciliation, if you can call it that. So yeah.
Yeah, some sort of a responsibility, some sort, because
it's an investment. It is not just responsibility. It is understanding and seeing that in order for us to actually move forward together, and to be healthy human beings and to thrive in the ways that we have become accustomed to, that we actually have to do the work and we have to push through the shit that's hard. That's what has to happen.
But like, yeah, like face forward or whatever, because there's always this thing, and I've been listening to it, and I mentioned it to you, Karen, and this thing about, oh, the time, and now that we have the time, no, like you have to make the time, because it is part of the investment. It's not just the money, the funding, and the grants and all that. It is also you taking charge and making the time, because that's whatever it's gonna, the domino effect, and for everything else that's coming.
It's all the things. It's me as a human being.
Yeah,
I have to take the time, you know, and I have to figure out what I can carry into my everyday activities. And then there is the group, right? Me, or maybe the family, right? Like, so me and my family taking a look at it together and figuring that out. And then it's me and in my school, in my classroom, it's me in my job, it's me in my community meeting, it's me, you know, it doesn't stop. Just like most things don't stop, right? Like we have to keep going, because there is no like perfect end point. It's just about us evolving together.
Totally. And I want to talk about two plays that have to do with each of you. One is, I hope we can talk about it. We can talk about it, right, Crystal? Self-conscious?
We can talk about self-conscious.
Okay.
We can hint at.
Perfect.
We can hint at some things, but they're not official, so we can't really.
Perfect. So two play titles, Self-Conscious and The Ruby in Us. This needs to be talked about. This needs to be said. This needs another platform and another boost. So Self-Conscious is on Crystal's side, Bocon's side. The Ruby in Us is on Karen Ann's side. And talk to me a little bit about these two projects that are living projects that's also very in trend right now. Breathing, growing, hitting new areas and spaces and all that. I want to hear about it.
You want to start? I think you should start, Karen Ann, because way back when we were at the Globe together, we started talking about Ruby, and Karen Ann was like, I have an idea, and I was like, do it. We'll do it through Bocón. Do it.
Well, I think actually, I mean, even before that, I was going to say, I think one of the beautiful things about, you know, the friendship that Crystal and I have had over the years is that all of these things have been lived in our relationship, like sort of how we've supported each other in the work and encouraged each other and found opportunities for each other. Like, I mean, that's kind of, you know, sort of how we've operated over the years. And just to say, just to throw some love at you, like, I appreciate that so much. But The Ruby in Us is a musical that I wrote in part with the seniors from the 4th District Seniors Resource Center in southeastern San Diego. And it actually did start. It started when we were both working still at the Globe in the early days, and we were cleaning out, if you remember this, we were cleaning out the books, like old books from the bookshelf. We were moving things around and like trying to change the space around, I think when I first moved upstairs into that little area. And I think Roberta was running around and like being like, do you want this book? Do you want this book? Can you use this book? And I was like, and I don't know why, I saw this book on Ruby Bridges. And I was like, and then another one, which was like African folk tales, but it was illustrated. They're both beautifully illustrated books. And I was like, I will take those. And so I hung on to it for a really long time. And then that was when I was like, I've always been fascinated with this story. There's something in this story that isn't just, oh, this was the first little girl who, you know, integrated a school, which was absolutely super important. But that story has been told many, many times in that way. But I was like, it it just hadn't hit me quite yet. I was like, there's something here. And Crystal over the years had just like encouraged me to write and to keep just write something. And she's like maybe the only person I think that has seen the iterations of Ruby. I mean, there are stories that had like barely had anything to do with actually the Ruby the person at all that she's been part of. And so but some of the music has stuck around, and so that process has been great. But anyways, the Ruby and Us, it's a musical that we wrote. It does tell the story of Ruby Bridges integrating William Frantz Elementary in the 50s, about 5 years after Brown versus the Board of Education, which was the landslide, what is it called when a judge, Supreme Court legislation, thank you, came down, which basically said it was illegal, right, to segregate schools. But it took about 5 years before, anybody did anything about it. So, and Ruby was actually technically one of 5 kids who did it at that time, but she's just the most famous. And so what I ended up writing was a musical that told the story, or tried to tell the story from adult Ruby's perspective, really looking back at a particular moment in her adult life that where she decided to own her own story, and looked back on those events, not because it was important to sort of talk about the event itself, but it was important for her to discover how that opportunity was created for her and supported by her community. And that in fact it was really being part of a community of people that enabled that moment to happen, and enabled her family to survive. And then what does she do with it, at that moment? Because after that point in Ruby's life, she decided to start teaching and speaking and, revisiting that experience. And that, I think, then informed her life in that moment going forward. And I think that's the thing that was interesting to me, is that owning her own story, and as we talk about, co-creating and curriculum and people, investigating sort of narrative, that she changed the direction of her life and what it was about and what it was for, and found meaning in that experience beyond maybe that initial, act. But that, this gives me something to do, some new work to be done in the world now. So anyway, sorry, all that is to say I could go on clearly about this for a while, but that's the Ruby and Us.
Yay!
Love it.
Yeah, totally.
And Crystal's talking about working on it, right, with Bocón still.
Yeah, we applied for a little bit of funding so we could develop the musical part of it a little bit more, because it's it needs it needs to be written down, it needs a score, and it needs to be developed a little bit more, and just put it down, to be able to put it down on paper, so that someday someone else out there can lots of people can go do it, produce it. But that it needs the support, it needs help from different theaters, and we're just doing our small part to keep that story moving.
So that's how you get things done.
Yeah.
In the meantime, I actually have received another commission that is also allowing me a little bit of time to revisit some of the music, and so I'm working on that right now as well.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And Self-Conchas, señorita?
Conchas, ay, mi corazón. So this is a play that that Wendy Maples and I wrote in collaboration with a team of young people, of actors, of young girls, one trans boy, but just about being a middle school girl in San Diego. So it's a modern day 2018 now. It seems like a long time ago. But when we could go to school in person.
Yeah.
So it's just a modern day tale of being a middle school girl in San Diego, and just about how sometimes San Diego is projected, obviously in the media and in the commercials, is like the super duper fun and just the beach,
California,
California, dude. and we're all
video. So
yep, and you know we're all blonde and
we surf
and we surf and we go to Cabo and you know we have our Mexican experience at Old Town and have tortillas.
Cinco de Mayo,
Cinco de Mayo, baby.
we watch that
Old Town.
handmade in the window, like a museum.
Exactly. And how, as you know, when you're growing up, you know, what is that? Who are you really? You know, how do you look like in comparison to what's being projected about what San Diego is? And so we go through the story of these three girls, you know, and they're all names related to a shell or concha. So there's Concha, which is her nickname. There's Consuelo, which is actually Concha is supposed to be the nickname for Consuelo. And then we have Shelly, who's Michelle, but they call her Shelly, right? So these three girls who have just they have drastically different experiences, but very representative of San Diego. So Concha is Mexican American. She looks whitish. She doesn't speak Spanish very well, you know, we call that pocha. You know, her dad is immigrant and he's like always talking to her in Spanish and she understands, but she always responds back in English and isn't very comfortable with that, but really wants to like represent, you know, be representative of her culture. And then we have Consuelo, who just arrived like weeks, you know, into the United States from Mexico, from, you know, chose Nayarit. Escaping some dangerous situation and speaks very little English and is starting middle school and that, you know, everything that brings and feeling like yeah, there's a bunch of Mexican kids here, but none of them speak my language or they're just different. They're not Mexican kids, they're Mexican American kids and that's different. And then we have Shelly, who's Filipino, and she also emigrated. But she's been in the States for a little bit longer and you know, and speaks English, but also has that immigrant experience and that, you know, and that connection to our Filipino cousins, as I like to say, because we have a history, Mexicans and Filipinos, we have, you know, we have a connection. And
we don't speak our language because of the same.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The colonizers, right?
Exactly.
But, you know, and there's like that Catholic connection and, you know, but it's just a journey of these three girls and you know and then there's a duende who really personifies all of their insecurities, whatever they may be, and all the insecurities that we had in middle school, plus the ones that are also sometimes connected to our culture, you know, the language barrier and I don't speak Spanish or I look white, you know, it's something that I grew up with, like feeling insecure because I look white. And you know, what does that matter? Does it not matter? You know,
well, there's not a look really. I mean, it's again, we're going back to the social canon of how Mexicans should look like, or, you know, when anybody, exactly. And you go to Mexico City and there's a whole, and it's rainbow. Like by area, right? You know, if you go to certain areas, you're going to look a certain way. You go to the other area, they're going to look a certain way. So yeah, anybody, exactly.
Right.
What is duende? What's a duende?
A duende is how do you translate duende?
Kind of like it's not a leprechaun, but it's
it's like a trickster. He's a trickster character.
Okay. I'm like leprechaun, but
no, and
throws some Shakespeare and he's a puck.
yeah,
exactly.
And he's just like a magical creature that kind of like shows up. Yeah, and he can, you know, it's not a he, it's a they. So that, you know, they take on the persona of, you know, female characters, male characters, androgynous characters, but they're there to magnify your insecurities. And as middle schoolers, we know we had lots of them.
Yeah.
And then really the story takes a pretty drastic turn when they're faced with one of their close family members and, you know, adult friends who gets deported. And how does that change absolutely everything? And how do you move on from that? And so really it's about their relationships as girls and how we need each other. Even though we're, you know, and again, finding that what connects us, even though we're so different, what connects us? We have a connection to immigration. We have a connection here to San Diego. We have a connection just because we're middle school girls. And even though like there's even a language barrier and, you know, all of that. And so it really is, it's a beautiful journey. And Wendy Maples and I are in the middle of editing it to fix it in case someday you could potentially buy it. That's all I can say about that.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful play, just to say, I mean, because I just loved just the relevance again, like that for me, of course, being a San Diegan, right? Like I'm not Mexican, I'm not Filipino, but I saw myself in that experience being embodied in that play. And I think that it's so good to see a story centered about people who come from where I come from, who experienced life in a very similar way. And then also I think really relevant, right, to the moment we find ourselves in, you know, as a nation. So I think it's really awesome that is a pathway forward, so that there's more and more material out there for theaters, other professionals, schools to, you know, we need more stories. We need more stories about the actual lives of people. That's just how I feel about it. And instead of the life as perceived by, you know, some middle-aged white guy sitting in a closet in New York.
Exactly. And yeah, I was going to talk about miscasting and racist casting and everything, but we're running out of time, and we have more important things to talk about, because this is
Girl, that's a whole other podcast.
That's a whole other podcast and different episodes. But yes, with what you said, Karen, about the white guy in the closet or sitting in a closet somewhere, these stories, I have to say this too, when you are looking for stories, say, you know, a producer or a director or a theater company, this does not necessarily have to be a commission. And I have to say it, the stories are out there already, and the stories are written out there already. And this thing about, oh, they need to be polished or they need to be worked on. No. Yes and no, right? I mean, you can talk about the technical aspect of it, like we were saying with Ruby, that it needs to be written down, those types of things, but not overwritten or edited in that sense. The stories are out there already. And yes, yay commissions, but it's not a really, I need, you know, in order to develop those stories. That's not true. I have to say it.
I was texting Crystal and I was like, we really need to talk about this artistic excellence bullshit.
Yeah, when they're like, well, you need to commission the story in order to find the story. No, sir, no. The stories are there. The stories have been there, and they have been written like forever and ever and ever with everybody. So this commission criticism is untrue.
I'm starting to believe, and I'm going to say something slightly scandalous, and I hope I still have a job when this gets released, but that artistic excellence is just bullshit for what white people will buy.
Yeah, exactly. And produce, and therefore, again, hence the podcast idea, subscription and audience and the development and all of that. You
it
just
goes all the way back to ticket.
All the way. Yeah. And you just hit the mark also, Karen, when you said, I am not Filipino, I am not Mexican, and I saw myself in Self Conchas, in the title. And it's happened to all the plays, because that's what the work does. When I learned about Ruby Bridges, I was like, when I saw your play and I had the opportunity to work on your play, I was like, oh my God. And then you go and you research and you do, and she's like in her mid-60s, when you would think that she would be like 200 or 300, right? And you're like, oh my God, this woman is in it. And then that brings reflection and thought and work, and that's what it is about. And it has absolutely technically nothing to do with me, you know, and it hit me and it touched me. So that's what it is.
Just recently, last week, was the anniversary of, and I'm going to mess up the number, but I think it's the 60th anniversary of Ruby integrating the school. And then also in that exact same week, her mother, who plays a really huge role, of course, in supporting her and actually making it happen for her, also passed away. So just want to give some love and pay some homage to that family right now. She also has a book, I believe, that is being released about the anniversary as well. So plugging for Miss Ruby, because I feel like none of us would be sitting here, if having the opportunities that we've had, the education that we've had, especially in the United States, that, if that little girl and other little girls like her, and those women at the senior center, that also the ripple effect, we had some amazing conversations with them about, what their own experiences were like and how integrating in schools affected them.
Yeah. Some of them for some of them, it was hard to watch. Yes.
I just want to point that out, like in terms of the thing that Crystal and I have in common in terms of the kind of work we created, is that we created it with community. We had those people sitting in the room, writing with us, investigating the ideas with us. While we may not have written word for word what they offered, it is their spirit that pulled that story and made it a story, and made that story an authentic story. And so the reason I can see myself in there is because that kind of process, happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Love it. And sometimes, that's why I like having a podcast, because you get all sorts of comments and people, and they say, no, it should be this length, or no, you should do this, you should do that. And I'm like, hey, this is organic. And I've seen podcasts that are 2 hours, 50 minutes long and people keep doing it, and this is, this is the example of that. I want to go to the title of this podcast, From Another Zero. And again, people are like, what is that? I don't get it. Is that right? Is that what you wanted to say? Are you sure? So it's not just starting from zero. It's when you start with your essence and your experience and your background, it just can't be a simple zero. It has to be another zero. So how has that been for you two, and sharing with us your other zeros in life?
I'm gonna let you go first, Crystal.
Oh man. I was like, Karen Ann, yes. What do you have to say?
Looking forward to hearing your zeros, Karen Ann.
I'll talk about, a couple of things. One, moving to Japan. I think that's a
recent zero.
A huge, zero, I think just kind of compiled with, let's just add the layer of COVID, of pandemic, and add, an additional layer of that Bocón just got their 501c3. So
Yay.
Bocón, we literally got it in March, like right when all this was happening. So we're starting from the zero. We have all this experience, but now we can move forward officially as a 501c3. While I moved to Japan and have to continue to run my organization, virtually, and online, and continue to do the work, and how to, what does that look like? How do we do that? And also the experience of, like, I grew up in San Diego. I was born in LA, came to San Diego when I was 8 months old. I think I lived in Arizona for like 2.5 years, and I was like terrified for my life, and I did not do well in the heat, and because I'm used to San Diego, like perfect weather,
the surfing
and surfing and my blonde hair, and so I was like, what is this? But going to a place that is, taking all my tools and knowledge and skills and going somewhere that, like, I don't speak the language, I look nothing like everybody around me, the culture is drastically different than even American culture or Mexican culture, and it's a complete start over. And there is something invigorating and exciting. Almost, it's like you said, it's almost like you're wiping the slate clean and starting over, but you're not, because you're coming with all of your tools. And that has been a fun experience, just like looking for jobs in public schools in Japan, and having that experience is like, I could do this, I could do that, I can work with the kids, I could teach the teachers. I'm like, but you're in a totally different environment where the kids are talking to, they all of a sudden they're talking to each other, and they're talking to each other in Japanese. And I'm like, are they talking about me? I don't know. Like, are they be good? Like, I don't know what they're talking about. Like, all these experiences. So I think this whole year has been from another zero in so many different levels. And it just makes so much, that title makes so much sense right now in so many ways. But yeah.
I mean,
Hey, man.
Hey,
I'm not
Dee.
that far off from you in what I'm gonna say. Like, I think,
Oh my
you know,
God.
when all of this happened for me, it was moving to New York and taking this job, and I wasn't even there a year when this happened. I think, you know, suffice it to say that. And then I also sprained my ankle at the beginning of the year. So I spent the first couple of months, you know, in a boot and a cast.
In
And
the snow.
so, yes, and Alejandra, you were with me. We were traipsing through New York, you know, looking for a place to live and just all of the things. So, I mean, and then here I find myself back in San Diego, and, you know, I mean, I have so many zeros to start from just the last year. And I feel like we keep getting them this year, you know? So it's hard. It's hard to kind of know where you stand right now. So you have to kind of be ready for another zero any moment.
Another one's coming.
Another
I'm feeling it coming.
Yeah, you know, and I'm hoping, I was thinking actually today about, you know, like last year at the beginning of the year, a friend of ours had like got some people together to do like vision boards, and, you know, and little did we know any of this was really going to shake out the way it has. And I was looking at what I had, you know, created or I had added, because I had an existing one, so I was adding to mine. And I was like, you know, a lot of the things that are on here, I'm been able to make some strides towards this year, even though all of this has gone down, even though I had to, you know, leave New York suddenly one day and then be gone for 6 months. And then I had to fly back to New York and close up my apartment and put things in storage. And, you know, even though all of this life shift has been happening around me, you know, I've been able to make steps towards things that were really desires of my heart for my life that had nothing to do with my job and nothing to do with being in New York or San Diego. So, you know, who's to say, right? Like the silver linings are there. And so I think that's my from another zero.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, it's just, I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to go through the snow with you in your boot. In New York, you know, going through the boroughs.
Amazing Thai food. Remember
amazing Thai food, you know, walking by myself in hordes, you know, of people back then, of course, while it snowed, you know, trying to go and see Jagged Little Pill, make it in time, standing room only. Oh my God, a whole other episode.
It's really crazy too, because just to say in the beginning of that year, because for my job, I had been traveling a lot. Yeah. So I was like, before we even got to, you know, shut down in March, I had been to Ohio, Michigan, Texas. I'm sure there's something I'm forgetting. Pennsylvania, you know, in and out of San Diego, back to New York, all those times with the boot, all of those trips. And you know, and I was able to, I was actually able to be in a lot of the places that, you know, were in this election again from another zero. I was in these counties that flipped for this election.
I was gonna say you were on a campaign trail. I was gonna say.
I went to 2 Bernie rallies the week before COVID. Like,
that's right.
It's crazy the things I have done in the first 6 weeks of this year. But that really all feel like foreshadowing and
coincidence. I don't think so.
Love the voice. Yeah, that's why I also say that, and I love that we talked about education curriculum and kids, because I've had friends talk to me and say, oh my God, what a time to be alive, you know, and in this like dark cloud. And I say, think about it, man. Like, really think about yourself. We went, we did, we conquered, we went to school, we traveled, like I studied abroad. I had the opportunity. There was nothing that stopped me in that sense. And now these kids, they're like kids that are going from high school to college that are not having that experience, graduation, prom, all these things that have been taken from them in that sense historically now, and that's going to mark a generation. I'm like, no. Like, get out of your head, get out of your butt, you know, and think about these kids. Really, with us, we're like, You know, I mean, it's hard, yes, but whatever, world, you know, it's like, it's them that really we need to like go back and look and see and make sure that they're okay because of everything that we've been talking about. But yeah.
I will just say, like, one of the favorite things I think for me that has been, you know, out of this horrible situation has been that, you know, when all of the family was here together for 6 months, and every single day for 6 months, we ate dinner together.
Yeah, you would have never had that.
No phone
for that long.
We all sat, I mean, you know, because San Diego, outside on the patio.
Sorry.
But every single day, I got to sit across the table from my niece and my nephew, like things that I would never have been able to do to be part of their lives. And while it was really uncomfortable in many ways, it was also such a unique and a bonding experience that will stay with me, and I think will stay with them, right? Like what was the best of times in the worst of times? It was the fact that we all had enough time to sit down and just be. So,
yeah,
you know, and now everybody's getting that with COVID. Like we've all been safe. We've all been healthy. Like there's so much to really be grateful for in the not so greatness.
Totally. Agreed. And with that also, we ask our guests about a mom and pop shop or a place that you like to visit and would like to give a shout out to support, and a nonprofit or cause. So which one or ones are yours?
I as we were having our conversation, because at first I didn't know what I was gonna like plug, but as we were having our conversation, I thought of a couple places. Number one, Mom and Pop, which is not Mom and Pop. It is, you know, a friend of ours, an artist. She's from San Diego. She's from Tijuana. She's amazing, Valeria. And she has her coffee shop, Café Dionisio, here in Tijuana. I mean, if I was cooler, I would tell you exactly where it's at, but I have to take an Uber to even find out where I'm at.
The boulevard. No, just to go straight to the boulevard, and then you'll see it to your left.
There you go.
Beautiful.
And it's a beautiful
and
cafe,
yummy too.
And delicious, and and she, you know, it's an artistic space, and you know, it's her baby, and it's beautiful.
And she's like an amazing human being. So
yes, we love you, Vale.
We love you. Shout out to Vale. And then, you know, I would be dumb if I didn't obviously plug Bocón, but we already talked about Bocón.
No, that was gonna be mine, so don't take.
Oh, okay, shoot. Okay, I will. Then you can plug mine. But the other arts organization that I want to plug, because I'll tell you the story. So it's Onstage Playhouse, and
I don't know. God, yes.
I don't know if you saw that.
Oh, I did.
They got a freaking letter.
We need to talk about that.
Yes, I wanted to bring it up earlier, which is why I like looked at my phone briefly to see if I could find the letter real quick.
You got a letter. Finish. I don't know.
Oh, sorry.
Oh my God,
they got a letter.
But let's do context. Onstage Playhouse is in Chula Vista, California. Okay, Chula Vista, like Karen Ann said, is an exit, you know, towards TJ, towards the border. So there's a lot of Mexican people there. So you wouldn't think that you get one of those types of letters. Continue.
Exactly. Very and multicultural, right? There's a lot of immigrants, a lot, you know, multicultural place. Anyway, they got a freaking letter because they have a screen that's like facing out to the street, and they have like they've been putting like Black Lives Matter and like just like in support of what's going on. I mean, obviously the theater's doors are closed because of what's going on. They've been doing like some online stuff. Anyway, they got a letter saying, you know, we will never ever forget what you did supporting the BLM criminals or something like that. Please don't quote me, because that's what I was trying to build.
The looting,
Yeah, basically calling the you know, Black Lives Matter movement like criminals and blah blah blah, and it ends with you fucking assholes. And so James Darvis put it up and was like, you know, hey, we need some love after getting this, and was just like, obviously we have so much work to do. We're in the heart of Chula Vista, surrounded by, you know, Latinos, Latinas, and here we are with this letter. And I was just like dumbfounded, and I mean I just reposted it. It was like, yeah, you're right, we will never ever forget that you supported this and that you stood up.
And there has to be a long list. I mean, not just Onstage Playhouse. Come on,
right? Of course,
the person threatening to urinate on their
on their doorstep.
Every day. Like, come on, man, find something to do with your time. Seriously.
I can't. I mean, I having lived here and I went to high school here, you know, I believe it.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I mean, this is one of the culture shocks for me and my assumptions moving from TJ to San Diego, thinking that it wouldn't happen. And then, you know, that's for me. Yeah.
No, I mean, we don't have time to talk about that, but just to say, I'm really sorry that that is happening. And I think that that's a lot of fears of nonprofit arts organizations across the country in this moment, and any organization really, right? Like they might be alienating people who lean a certain way. And I think it's also been like a come to Jesus moment for them, like to double down on who they want to be in the world. So I'm super happy. It makes me even happier to support Onstage, you know, going forward, that's, you know, what they've been doing. Cause I haven't been walking around, like my house is a couple blocks away, but I'm like, I didn't see it. So, but you know, I really feel like that's the choice now, right? Like we've got to, with all the things that are happening, we have to decide who we are as people, as individuals, as artists. You know, it is up to us in this moment to make the world we want to, you know, be part of. So
yeah, so shout out to them. I know they've been doing some work online. If I would have known, I would have, you know, did a little more research. But let's just go to Onstage Playhouse, follow their stuff, support them. You know, we've had 2 of our plays there. You know, they've been very welcoming to us. We, you know, rent space there, and we've had our Self Conchas was produced there. So they're just amazing. You know, amazing people, very supportive.
I'm just gonna say, you know, of course, Bocón, right? Like you all should support Bocón and with the amazing work that they're doing. I'm going to suggest that you take a really hard look around you and you find the organizations that are doing the actual work in communities, and be that support the people who are part of the ecosystem in your community where you live, because we need them to survive and we need them economically right now. And so I'm not saying one thing, I'm saying do the research and dig in and see who's doing the work. As far as like theaters are concerned, I mean, like, you know, I've turned down performance gigs because with places that I was like, you know what, I don't want to support you anymore, right? Yeah. Like I don't want to be your token on your stage. I want to do work that is lifting up my people, and I don't think that's what you're about, and that's cool. Like I don't hate you. You all do what you do. I'm gonna go do what I do, and what's most important to me is making sure that this whole podcast that we've been talking about is actually happening in the world. So whatever that is for, you know, you and for anyone else, like go out and invest in your local community, spend your money there.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with you not wanting to be associated with someone or an organization's mission or their work, and it, you know, and then again uplifting the cause, whatever it is. And I also with that I want to say that I want to support different voices. And that's what this space is for. And I also reached out to the blondie here to help me out in that sense, because it's like you said, Karen, and yes, you do your work and I respect that, but more work needs to come to, you know, to the stage in this sense, to the stage in life.
Lean in, you know, I mean, I think that's, again, like back to sort of, I think the relationship that Crystal and I have had over the years. And I think that, you know, that is about us both. I think that was our like authentic place of friendship, is that we just wanted to be supportive and figure out how to make things happen, because historically and systemically, we are the last. We are the first to go and we are the last to receive anything. We are also like the theater in that way. But I really mean that especially in San Diego. San Diego is not a place that has really supported people of color, BIPOC folk in any sense of consistent way. There's been a lot of, you know, taking, getting our energy for their efforts, but not a lot giving back. And I'm again, no, no hard feelings, or maybe a few, but just to say that if I'm going to look at whatever resources and time and energy that I have, then I'm now going to be really, really focused on supporting those people who support me.
Mm-hmm. And with, yeah, I wanted to mention that too, that we've discussed when you see, you do all the work, and obviously you do it because of the need to, again, boost the voices and learn and be more, you know, equal and diverse and all these things that we continue to learn. I think that all of that stage of my life was thanks to you and the people that we worked with in arts engagement, that I was like, again, I was up in my butt, you know, too, in that sense, that I didn't really see what I was looking at, right? And I want to take this moment to recognize your work, and your work, Crystal, and then my work, because I'm human and I have an ego too, and it's coming out at this point. But it's those things that you keep going, and you say my worth and my work and the value, it does not come from someone else saying that is good or that I'm creating change. It's the work that needs to speak for itself, and then I need to keep going. But sometimes, yes, sometimes we're human, and sometimes we're like, hey, yeah, I would have liked to be on that panel. I would have liked to be invited to that board. Hey, I did that work and I never, you know, and you're not even inviting me, and you're using my words that we talked about in this meeting where you said it wasn't going to work, you know, and now it's working all of a sudden and magically. Or things, trivial things like, you know, our schools, our colleges where we went to, where they're like, oh, the most successful, you know, graduates of XYZ generation are coming to share their success stories. And you're like, hi, I went to that school. Did I? You know, didn't I? Stuff like that, that I have a friend that's always like, stop it. If they don't invite you, or if they don't say that, that doesn't say who you are. No, that doesn't say who I am, but sometimes it feels nice, you know? So I'm using this space that I created because of that to say that you both are, I admire you. You're badasses at what you do. You know what you do. And because of you, the change is happening. And that's how it is. And, you know, there's no other way to put it. And thank you for being here and giving me the time, because you're very busy individuals. You're always busy and ongoing and on. So, and I'm very also proud and happy to call both of you my friends. That's also,
thank you.
Yeah.
I know, I'm like,
it's true. And it's not like a little bit of mush, but it has to be said, and it has to have its own, again, space and moment to recognize it, because if we don't say it and do it, like, obviously there's not going to be that many people who should that don't. So that's
I appreciate, thank you so much. And I appreciate you too, Alejandra. And just, you know, again, same thing, like the way we've been able to support each other, even though we all don't work together on a daily anymore. And just, you know, seeing and keeping our eyes open for each other in the world is super valuable. And that's, I mean, again, you know, why I was saying we got to support each other. And we got to give kudos to people. You know, you have to give people credit for their work. You can't walk off with other people's ideas and call them your own. And that's also another, you know, rabbit trail moment that I'm not going to go down, but I appreciate that you see those things because you've experienced those things, and that we're always trying to do better than how we've been treated in our lives.
Yeah, it's not because of the shine or the acknowledgement or, you know, recognizing, again, this path, this trail or paving, but sometimes it's like, hey, you have a hey moment, you know, there's only so much I can continue seeing behind the scenes, right? So yeah.
Thank you. It's been fun. I mean, I love talking with you both anytime. So you know, we get to record it and put it out to the world and, you know, sure, why not? I would record. I mean, Karen and I have talked about this so many times. Like, I wish we could just record our rants when we would go to, you know, lunch and just put the phone down and just record what we were saying. But
we probably should have just done it.
I know.
But I don't know if that would be like able to be published, but we talk a lot of shit, but
We can figure it out. Okay. It's not shit.
I know, yeah.
We process certain kinds of experiences in life together. We are the safe place for it, but also in talking about it in that safe space, we realize that it's probably not a conversation that should stay here.
Right. And then not everybody's ready to hear it, which we experienced also when we would have those conversations with our colleagues and found ourselves talking to ourselves again.
Mm-hmm. And kind of feeling weird about it too, which is like why am I feeling weird?
Yeah, I was like, wait, you're supposed to be feeling weird, not me.
Yeah, exactly. and it's lingering. What's happening?
Truth is hard. Truth is hard.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
Well,
but I love you both. I love you both.
I love you too. And again, thank you. Everybody, keep your eyes out. Self-Conchas, the Ruby in us, and these ladies are going to send me their bios. Hopefully when we log off, so I can share it with you all. Check everything that we're doing in From Another Zero. We're doing views, not reviews, views, and all these things about what's happening. And we are going to finish the season soon in 1 or 2 episodes. I don't know yet. So yeah, pay attention. I'm like, oh my God, my words. Pay attention, and we'll listen to each other very soon. Thank you both, ladies.
Thank
Love
you.
you.
Love you.